Hi everyone, let's get started. Can you hear me fine? Yeah? Can't hear me? Is that better? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Still early? We've been hearing a lot about user assistance in this conference, starting from the pre-conference and continuing in some of the tracks today. And so some of what I present might look like a repetition, but what I'll talk about a little later on in this session is about my transition in the journey as a tech writer and finally going on to a user assistance developer. So I'm guessing that most of us here are tech writers. Can we have a show of hands? How many people are tech writers over here? Yeah, yeah. So most of us. And how many people are currently working in user assistance developer? Okay, come on. I know some of you guys are. Come on. Okay, fine. So I'm going to start right from the basics, and the question I'm going to ask you first is, what is tech writing? Well, as we know by working in the field and also by participating in conferences, tech writing is all about documents. And yes, there's a bit of online help, and maybe there's a bit of other different types of artifacts that we do. But as tech writers, essentially we're working, I believe 91% of the time on documents, right? And so if you look at the transition from technical writing to user assistance, the question that comes to mind is, do we need to even do that? Or why do we need to do that? Or in other words, what's wrong with documents? They provide the information that users need, don't they? Or do they? Well, it's a long-standing joke that nobody reads documents. And while it's a joke, it's also true, and there are reasons for that. Many of these reasons have been almost done to death. Documents have too much information, it's not so easy to find the information that you're looking for. You do a search for a particular string and you get some 2,000 results, and then you narrow it down a bit and then you get 235 results. And then once you start going through those, you find that, well, a lot of it is kind of background information, maybe it's repetitive, the information is scattered across different documents. You don't get the answer exactly that you're looking for, right? The other problem is, of course, again, as we've heard multiple times, that typically the information is outside the application. So you're trying to run something, you're trying to complete some task, and you just want to know a particular value, or you want to know a particular step that you need to complete, and you need to go and open up a document that you perhaps need to download from somewhere. So it's not really as though you get the answer you're looking for right there, right away. And then again, a lot of people are looking at documentation on small form factor devices, mobile devices, tablets, phablets, what have you. And as we've seen and heard, your typical PDF or HTML output with pages and pages and paragraphs and full A4 size figures is not really usable on small devices. So these are some of the many reasons that people don't really turn to documentation. In fact, it's often a last resort. Mostly what users do when they need help is first they try and figure stuff out themselves. And if that doesn't work, they ask someone. And it's only when that doesn't work that they actually turn to, let's say, the internet or to the documentation that comes along with the product. And that's often the last resort. So what does user assistance do? How does user assistance differ? User assistance essentially sets out to answer these two main questions. What kind of assistance do users need? And when, under what circumstances do users look for assistance? So when you talk about the kind of assistance that users need, typically they're either looking for what is it, what does it do, how does it work, how does it interact with something else that I'm trying to do. That's conceptual information. They might also be looking for what values can I put here. When I put these values, what does it mean? What is the high end? What is the typical value? How does it impact what I'm trying to do? And that's mainly reference information. And then most often, users just want to know what's the next step I need to do to complete this task. You know, I'm here, I just want to change something, I want to set something, I want to configure something. What's the next step? And am I really sure that this that I'm trying to do is the next step, it's the right step? And that's typically your procedural information, your tasks. So in what circumstances do users need this information? Typically, first-time users, and it could be first-time users of a product, or more often it could be first-time users of a feature. They could also be using your product to change something. It may not be that they are using it for the first time to install or configure. Maybe they've been using a default configuration, or maybe somebody else has done the configuration and now they need to change something. So they need information about how to change it and what impact that's going to have. And finally, of course, often users need help when they run into trouble. So they're trying to complete some task and it's not working, they're getting an error, they don't know what to make of it. Maybe they're not getting an error and they don't know what to do next. So that's when they look for information and for help. So there are many types of user assistants, and actually we've seen many good examples of these, especially in the workshop yesterday, and in some of the other sessions we've been talking about a lot of this. So I don't need to really go through all of these in depth, but I will show you some examples, and again it's stuff that that you've already seen, but it serves to highlight the difference between the tech writing approach and the user assistance approach to information. One thing that I want to say in addition, and we might have also heard something contrary to this, is that with user assistance, it doesn't mean documentation is going away. In my view, documentation is not going away, but user assistance is going to be a lot more than just documentation. It has evolved into user assistance, is still evolving and will continue to evolve, but our typical user manuals and guides and reference material will exist, perhaps even in similar or recognizable formats, in addition to all the other artifacts that we work on. So here's one typical example, okay? It's a somewhat trivial example in some ways. Let's say that you're writing a user guide for a product and you're explaining to a user the new user registration form, and you see that, you know, it's not really a serious piece of technical writing, and if you look at the format for the birthday and the month and the day and the year, you're never really going to go into it at that level of detail. You're not going to give examples like that. But this is an example, and in a more complicated or more involved procedure, you would probably go to that level of detail. So this would be your typical tech writing approach, right? So when you go to user assistance, and this is embedded user assistance, this is specifically a UI, a GUI based user assistance, it's a lot simpler. There are a lot fewer words, and if you were, for instance, going to be looking at translation costs, there's a lot less to translate. At the same time, if you're looking at user design, it definitely has an impact on user design, because you need to consider this information that you're presenting in the product, the embedded UI, right? So here you've basically removed all scope for users to do anything wrong, because there's really no way that they could enter their date of birth in a wrong format. And again, if you want to, let's say, guide users to which fields they must fill, which fields are mandatory, you want to tell them about what kind of characters they can use in their username or in their passwords, you put in all kinds of notes and tips and important and warning and so on in your docs, right? Yeah. Again, with UA, all of that goes away. It's all possible to be embedded, right? And if you look at this, it's just one small screen. It's not even the complete new user registration screen. And you have so many different aspects of user assistance here. There's the red little box that tells you that you can't use this, you can't leave this field blank. And then there's the prompt for what you can and can't use for the username. And then if you look at the password, it's actually giving you 3 different types of feedback on what you can use there. It's telling you the static information, which is how many characters and what type of a password you can choose. It's giving you a more kind of link. In this case it's a Y, and that will take you to more detailed information. And it's also dynamically updating the strength of your password. Now, if you look at it, none of this is new. But what's new here is that it's coming into the domain of what used to be tech writing and is now the extended part of a tech writer's role, as we get into user assistance. Now consider this example. So let's say there's a new feature that you're documenting, and then you put together these 2 little paragraphs of text telling you what this feature does, how it works, how you use it, and so on, and here are 2 examples of how it has been done in the user interface, right? So it's just very little text, and this is typically a first item help. So this pops up the first time that you see this interface, and you are probably not a new user to the product at this point, but the feature has just been added. There's very little text, and provided that you are visually able, you can just look at the graphics, and you basically don't need anything more. In fact, in the Firefox interface, there is a learn more link. Most likely you don't need it. And then once you've seen this, you can just close those little pop-ups, and you're back to normal. Was there a question? No? Your mic isn't working? Is that working now? Yeah, I can hear some feedback. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, so moving on. Here's another example. Yeah, exactly. So if you're doing like a user guide for a product, and then you typically start out like this, and you have your table of contents, and you're talking about how your product is, and the great features that you bring, and how users can use the product to do all these fabulous things. And by the time you've reached the end of that, and you actually are providing some reference information or some nice to have information in the appendix, you're down to 1,000 pages or whatever it is. So now, I mean, not all documents are like that, and not all products are like that, obviously. But if you just contrast it with, and this is one of my favorite examples, the Dropbox tour. I just think that this is such a fabulous way to get your user involved. It's this really cute tour, and there's going to be a demo afterwards. So, or perhaps if you folks have your mobile devices, you can check it out at any point. It's such a great way of doing it, because it immediately involves the user. I know that Dropbox is a fairly, not very complex application, so you probably could summarize it in about 5 pages. But it's also not true that you can't do the same thing with more complex applications. You very well could at a very high level, and even within this product tour, there are links. Is there a problem with the speaker? Yeah, there does seem to be. Yeah? Right at the back, I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. Okay. So, this is a great and a very creative, a very innovative way of giving a high level overview of your product. And even within this little overview, there are links to more detailed and more, I presume, serious documentation. But this is just a great way of catching the eye of the user. And it may not be suitable to, again, more serious products. but that's more a question of how you write it and the kind of graphics you use. You need not necessarily have really such adorable graphics. You could go for more corporate stuff. It's just the presentation format that is so user friendly, I think. So word about training tutorials. Typically, I think over the last maybe 10 years, more than that, instructional design, has been on a parallel track with tech writing. It's not really been a field that was considered the same field. You could change from one to the other, but then it was always seen as a change. And I've worked in the field of instructional design, and I do understand that the approaches in the two fields are quite different, because the way you present information and your learning goals in instructional design are different from the way you approach documentation, which is so product centric. You're just talking about, here's our product, here's how we do it, here's how it works, here's the features and so on. So technical writing and product documentation is much more inside out, and training material tutorials are much more based on what the customer needs to know to complete a task. So it's very workflow oriented, and it's very much from the outside in. The sequencing of content is really quite different, and yet what you're doing is you're using the same body of knowledge to create that output. The format might be different, the structure is different, the approach is different, but it's the same expertise that you're bringing to the two outputs. So it's nice to see that now, as we go into user assistance, training once more comes under the purview of the UA developer as much as documentation does. And I think there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained by working on both. And I think that as a professional in this field, there's a lot to be learned by working on both the approaches and being able to see how you could, single source, yes, and also repurpose content in the two delivery outputs, right? So a lot of what I've spoken about was to do with graphical user interface. Actually, how many people here are working on GUI-based documentation? Okay, and how many folks are working on the command line or API documentation? Okay, so it's almost kind of equal. So CLI-based documentation has always been under the domain of tech writers, right? So we've been always editing man pages, and the man pages are often integrated with the tools. So to that extent, it's not something new that we do as user assistance developers. API documentation also, hasn't changed in the way that the documents are, the information is obtained. But the one thing that's new in API documentation is that now it's a lot more interactive. So if you look at this example, or if you look at the next example, I'll just show you in a moment. Here you actually have a lot of examples where the user can actually test out the command, try it out, get the request code, get the response code, and in this example the user could actually select the languages they want. And over here you can see how if they had a key to run it with, they could just use the try it button to get a sample of the request and the response. So this is something new in user assistance, which I have not seen done as long as we were purely in a tech writer domain. The other thing with, particularly with, let's say, command line, and to the lesser, to an equal extent with API documentation, is working on error and warning messages. And again, this has always been something that is just there in the code, and we don't really get to touch it. But with user assistance, what happens is that it doesn't work so much in isolation anymore. You have to be able to see those error messages. You have to be able to make sure that they make sense in the context, and you have to be able to provide your inputs on the language, on the consistency, and even on the content of the error messages, the warning messages. So finally, this is not a very dramatic looking screen for videos, but Yeah, videos is perhaps, videos are the newest entrant into the tech writer's life as we move into a user assistance role, right? Again, it's something that used to be quite far outside the domain of technical writing. And it used to be considered that there are skills for creating video that we simply couldn't do as tech writers. But that's changed, and videos are very much a part of what we do now. And if you ask me, a very interesting part of what we do. So these are just very, very simple, 1-minute videos on demos of what you can do over here. But the scope of videos as user assistants is immense, actually. The scope of demos, the scope of also, let's say, creative videos to talk about what your product does is also very much there, and goes beyond just the procedural videos that are typically used. So from all of this, I think the benefits of user assistance emerge quite clearly. Like one of the things that user assistance does so well, which technical documentation doesn't do so well, is to provide just enough information at the right time, in the right place, and in the context of the tool that you're trying to use, right? It doesn't direct users away from the tool, so that's clearly a benefit, and you don't have to search for assistance. It's there when you need it, right? And depending on the type of user assistance artifact that you're talking about, it could be much more user-friendly on small form factor devices than your typical PDF and HTML documentation. Again, this is not new, as we've seen in other presentations. Most of the tools that we use for developing user assistance are not very different from those that we use for technical documentation. Most of them are, for word processing, for publishing, for graphics, for screen grabs. But there is one thing which is new, and that is the video processing software, Camtasia mainly. Right, so there's quite a lot to be learned with regard to creating videos, but for the other aspects of user assistance, from the perspective of the tools that we use, it's not very different from what we were using as technical writers. When it comes to skills, it looks similar at the first glance, but at the same time, it's really quite different to the extent that it actually involves a paradigm shift in the way you approach your work. As I said earlier, when you are writing technical documents, you tend to look from the inside out. You know your product, or at least you know what your R&D folks tell you about the product, and you write about it from that perspective. When you're doing user assistance, that doesn't work so well, because you really need to think like a user. Now, this is a well-worn phrase, right? Even when we were writing just documents, they keep saying, oh, you need to think like a user. Well, that's not so easy if you're not using the product. You can't actually understand what a user, the kind of problems a user encounters, until you're trying out the same tasks yourself. Actually, how many people here get a chance to use their products as they write their documentation? Yeah, that's really great. I mean, that's most of us, and it wasn't so a while ago, right? Maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't like that. So, if you're able to use your product, and if you're able to attempt the same tasks that a user would be attempting, then you can actually put yourself in the user's shoes and construct your UA, your artifacts, from that perspective. Not from the perspective of, hey, here's my product, here's what it does, but from the perspective of, you want to do this, this is how you do it. So it's more scenario based, it's more workflow based. So the part about communication, this is nothing new. Communication is what we do. It's our bread and butter, right? But what's new in user assistance is that communication is not restricted just to the writing part. We also need to be able to speak, and we need to be able to show. And the reasons that we need to be able to do that is because we need to be able to work on videos, we need to be able to work on video type artifacts that may have audio, may not have audio, might be just a demo, could be one of those nifty tour kind of things like I just showed you, where you're showing something and the words that you use are not that many. You know, you're really trying to just demo something. So it's not as wordy as your typical documents tend to be, and that's a different kind of a skill. If you're also doing audio scripting for a video, that's a different type of a skill as well, because the spoken word is really quite different from the written word. And if you were to take your typical manual and then create a video in which someone reads it out, that just won't work, right? So when you're doing audio scripting, it's really a paradigm shift from the written word. So what do you think? I mean, I've told you some of the skills that you need for user assistance, but based on everything that you've heard today, yesterday, from me, from others, what do you think? What are the other kind of skills that you think would be needed?
Not in terms of skills and all. I would like to give an example that we actually did something like this.
Is there a mic? I think there's a mic here.
Okay, I work for a company that delivers software for automotive domain, basically dealer management systems for automotive dealerships across North America, Europe and Middle East. So what we did was we typically got away from one phrase that I caught from your presentation was how we we collaborate between technical writers and technical writing and instructional designing. So I would like to use the term blended learning here because the deliverables that I'm going to talk about right now in like 2 minutes are something related to blended learning. So we had a huge documentation that went in DVDs when we shipped our products, or when implementation specialists or deployment specialists went there and they actually put in a CD, read through the documents and did the deployment there. It was probably a 3 to 4 day process for them to go and actually train the people there to do the tasks. Virtual trainer training the people there through videos, a class, virtual class. Then about 2.5 years back, we shifted to agile methodology, and the demand in the market was so huge that people did not have time to go through these classes as well. So we shifted from PowerPoint presentations to actual tutorials as to how to do a task. 2-minute tutorials, 5 minutes tutorials, 10 minutes tutorials. The maximum was 15 minutes where the product would be very complex. So it was a mix of both technical writing and instructional designing. We used PowerPoint and then Captivate. It's a really good example because now we are in a phase where we actually have something called as Release Essentials, which is a one-page web page with links to various essential information that you need in a particular release when we are releasing a phase in the product. So that blended learning thing was what caught my attention, and I wanted to give this example. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that's, is this still on? Yeah. I think that's a fairly, I mean, it's not unusual. I think it's definitely going to become more common that from having separate parallel tracks for training and for documentation, you're definitely going to be moving in a direction where your training becomes almost a part of your documentation, especially in terms of using videos, especially for procedural. Sometimes you have talking head videos, sometimes you have just pure simulation and demos. You have a lot of opportunities in the training and video field to do simulations where you just show the steps and then you have a try it option. So users actually get to do the steps. Yeah, exactly. Anyone else?
Back to your question, I think we have to drop the follow rules mindset and get into a more creative mindset.
You want to expand on that? What kind of rules did you have in mind?
I mean to say for technical communication, we are typically tuned to following the process, following the rules, right? In user assistance, I think your Dropbox manual was a brilliant example. You're looking to connect with the user for that specific context in the most creative way possible. So that's
Yeah.
a skill that becomes
Yeah.
important.
I'm not sure that you could stop following rules because you're going to have rules even in your user assistance artifact development. But definitely it's going to be a lot more innovative. It's going to be there's going to be a lot of scope for creativity, and you can think out of the box, yes. And you can, to some extent, drop the extremely formal, almost stylized kind of writing that we do in our manuals and come to a more informal, more colloquial, almost face-to-face kind of conversation that you can have with your audience. Yes, I agree with that.
I just wanted to add to what you said because it was a very interesting talk. I had recently an experience with a company called Pluralsight.
Okay. There is this company called Pluralsight, which has got a lot of videos, and for people who freelance, they ask you to actually audition for it. So one of the things that I just wanted to add to what you're saying is that there are rules when you're, preparing videos, and also there are a lot of other constraints that you have to look into.
Yes.
The timing is one thing which I learned, and the accent neutralization. So if anybody wants to get into videos in a big way, there are these wonderful opportunities, but like you said very rightly, it's very exciting, but there are rules.
Yeah.
So
Also,
Pluralsight.
I didn't really mean in terms of typically the voiceover for a video, you need to identify the talent quite carefully. One of the things being the diction, the accent, as you said. You need a neutral accent. Depending on your audience, you may want an international accent, and
It can contribute to the videos depending on the action that we want to directly put in a text-to-speech software and lingo.
so I haven't seen text-to-speech used in videos. I'm not sure. Does it really work out well? Because there are a lot of terms. Okay. Okay. Good to know. Yeah, that's what I would have thought. Yes. Yeah. Also, there are certain terms that. Yeah.
Customize it based on your requirements.
I must tell you that I've seen speech to text used with not very good effect. It requires quite a bit of edit. So I'm not sure how well text to speech works, but yes, I can, I mean, it's good to know, yeah. Someone else?
Hi, I'm Suhail from Hexagon. My question relates to the first part of your presentation.
Yeah,
You talked about user assistance regarding documentation,
yeah,
and whatever you talked about relates a lot to user experience,
yeah,
having a better UI so
Yeah.
that you can reduce the documentation.
yeah.
How we as writers can get involved with user experience? What would be the role that we can play?
Yeah. So user experience is a field in itself, but we definitely do add value in that field in the role of UA developers. So mainly it's in terms of when we look at, let me go back to this slide over here. Yeah. So if you look at things like buttons and labels, I mean, you would have seen sometimes like this action will delete all your data. and then you say, okay, cancel. Yeah, well, you could have your button and your message a lot more in sync. You know, sometimes when you see an example like that, it leaves you in a bit of doubt as to which button does what, right? So as UA developers, we actually get to have a say in both the message and the confirmation buttons, right? Other things like screen titles, the text may be clear enough in itself, but when you go through a number of screens, you might see that they don't quite sync, you know. Or let's say, again, warning and error messages. When you look at the messages in the context of the product, so when you look at it outside, let's say you're just looking at a file that has all the messages collated, and you look at that and you do a language edit and it all looks fine. And then you're actually using the tool and you find that when the message actually comes up, it doesn't make sense in the context. So these are the aspects of user experience that we can actually contribute to. Even other things like the placement of text in the UI, right? If you have a lot of text that appears right at the top of the screen telling you, and you have like, let's say, a really long form and you have to fill in so many things, and so you have this big chunk of text. Well, that's not very user friendly. It would be much better to have it, you know, in the fields that it belongs to. Some of it you may not need right up front. It could be validation, like the password strings that I showed you. So those are the aspects in which we contribute towards user experience.
Thank you.
It's okay actually, because yeah, no, that's fine. I'm happy to answer questions as they come up, and we're almost done. So, yeah. You can go ahead. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, something similar to this is a Facebook documentation. If we can reference.
Yeah.
We don't have a Facebook manual as such, but then
Yeah.
as and when we need assistance,
Yeah.
we have it right there.
Yeah.
It's just not for consumers who are using the product, but it's also for developers who are trying to develop
Yeah.
APIs.
Yeah,
They've done a very
exactly.
good job on that.
Yeah, yeah, good to know. Okay, so just a little bit about the challenges that we face as we move from the role of technical writers to user assistance developers. Definitely there are new skills, and we've spoken about those already. There are new tools, and there are new stakeholders and internal customers, because now we are working not just with the R&D team or with the product management team, but we're also working with the user experience team. We are working with the team that's in charge of the user interface. We need to align with their schedules. As tech writers, just doing documentation, you know, the product has its release cycle, and then we just slip the documents in at the end. We could actually be making changes to our documents the day of the release, and we have done that, right? Well, for the embedded UI, that doesn't work. We need to have it edited, and we need to have it in the product to align with the product's release cycle. So that's one of the challenges, and for that we need perhaps new processes and definitely new workflows. What do you guys think? Are there other challenges that you can think of?
Yeah, it's not just about the developer. I'm just going to let Sohail finish. I was
ahead.
going to say it's about the change in thought process, because it's a paradigm shift.
Yes.
So still people, when you're giving sessions on mobile and user assistance, they ask, in which document can I see this?
Yeah.
So it's a huge thought process, change in thought process,
Yeah.
right? So that is definitely a challenge, and I'd like to hear your opinion on how you handle this in your organization.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I think in some ways it actually makes it easier, because in some ways there's more visible value in what we do because what we're doing is often embedded in the UI, or even if you look at, for instance, command line or API documentation, what we're doing is very close to what the development guys are doing. So in some ways I think they see more value in that. And I think that it's also very easy to understand, especially for dev guys who are using products and tools all the time, right? That when you're doing a task in the tool and you have the assistance right there, let's say you have an overlay for a first time use of a product or a feature, and you have the assistance right there, it's very clear that, oh yeah, this is a lot easier than going to some document and looking it up. So definitely there might be people who still have the mindset that, yeah, but I need a manual. And like I said, manuals aren't really going away, at least not right now. So it's going to be there. You can always point those guys to it. But I think in some ways, even among dev and product management, they do welcome this, because they see that we bring value in the way that the user experience evolves.
People who are well versed with the technology. So the old timers might still, I'm sorry for using the word, but they might still want to use the conventional tools that they've been using for years because they're comfortable with that. So that change management is a huge challenge in some of the organizations.
Yeah.
Related to this, you said paradigm shift, right? And I think the whole user assistance is part of the traditional document set, right? It cannot be the whole the document set what we tech writers do, right? If for a business application, user assistance, yeah, plays a very major role. For a complicated data center configuration, I'm writing a configuration guide.
Right.
So there, this user assistant doesn't play a major role.
Yeah, well, yes, in some product types, it's not always something that you can embed. For instance, you may not be having a GUI, so there may not be much embedded UI. At the same time, when you are looking at things like, let's say, demos, you can definitely do demos.
Yeah. So,
right?
no, my point is, so as I said, paradigm shift, I think it is just a part. So the whole, the way we write and deliver our documentation set, that will be there. I think this is
Yes,
this is
I
part
agree
of,
with you.
yeah.
I agree with you. That will definitely be there. And I think that is also to some extent an answer to your question, which is that the documents will still be there. But in terms of the mindset of old timers, as you put it, you know, you can't deny the way forward for very long.
Yeah, I was just, we were just having a quick chat. Put up a screen on the data center and provide your user assistance there, right? So
Yeah.
that actually breaks the conventional way of doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's probably something that will be happening going forward, definitely. I think we're out of time. Yeah. So thank you everyone, and I hope this session was helpful.
Thank you, Anamika. That was an informative session. I would like to call upon one of the audiences who has given her input about blended learning. Yes? Please come. Soumya, please.
Hello everybody, I've been asked to give my introduction. My name is Soumya Chakilam, and I work for CDK Global, which was previously ADP Dealer Services. I've come from Hyderabad. I have a total of 9.5 years experience in technical writing and 5 years of experience in blended learning, if I could call that. That's it.
Thank you, Soumya, and thank you, Anamika. Please accept this token of
Thank you.
appreciation.
Thank you. 1 second. Okay. I think this is still on. So I had mentioned that there are some demos for people who really want to see how, especially let's say the traditional approach to documentation versus the new user assistants and let's say adapted to small screens and tablets. my colleague Tina George will be setting up a few devices here, and you can all come and see how it looks on different form factor devices. I'm sure you all have seen it, but if you'd like to just have a quick tour.
I have an announcement for all of you. I would like to request you to assemble at Trinity Hall for the power.